Pratt Library State Library Resource Center here at the Central Library. This evening, we are pleased to have Glory Edim, in conversation with Jason Reynolds at the Pratt Library. But before I begin my introduction, I would like to remind you that we have many outstanding forthcoming programs at the Pratt. So please pick up your copy of the Compass newsletter or go to our website, prattlibrary.org, for future programs. Glory Edim is a literary tastemaster, entrepreneur, and advocate for diverse voices in literature. In 2015, she founded Well Read Black Girl, an online platform and book club dedicated to celebrating the works of Black women authors and creating a supportive online community for readers. Her accolades include the 2017 Innovators Award from the Los Angeles Times and the Madam C.J. Walker Award from the Hurston Wright Foundation. Gloria has contributed to the literary landscape with her best-selling anthologies, Well Read Black Girl, Finding Our Stories, Discovering Ourselves, and On Girlhood, 15 Stories from the Well Read Black Girl Library. Jason Reynolds is no stranger to the Pratt Library. He is the author of several award-winning books, including Look Both Ways, Long Way Down, and Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, with Ibrahim Kendi. He was a 2020-22 National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Please join me in welcoming Gloria Edim and Jason Reynolds to discuss her latest work, Gather Me, a memoir in praise of the books that saved me at the Pratt Library.
What's up, y'all? Everybody okay? Book talks. Listen, before we start, I've done a million of these things. And the one thing that never ceases to amaze me is that the people who come to book talks are always so serious. And it's strange. I think that we look at like what we do or this whole experience as something a little bigger than I think sometimes I think we put a little gas on it, and it's like, no, this my homie. We getting ready to talk about this thing she made. Hopefully this will be entertaining, yes, as well as interesting, and then we can all go home feeling better about the world in which we live. That's the goal. Okay, so bring that kind of energy. Like
he's telling y'all to loosen up
a little bit.
Okay,
it'd be so strange.
Let's pretend like we're at a Mary J. Blige concert.
Exactly.
I might start singing later.
I'm Mary J. Blige, by the way.
He is. But I can do the.
You can do the dance.
Okay.
All right. So to get started, to celebrate Glory's book, Glory's going to read a little bit, and then we're going to jump in.
All right. Here we go. And thank you, everyone, for being here. I see some familiar faces, and I absolutely love Baltimore. It's like a second home. So thank you. At the lowest points in my life, the most isolated and difficult times, when I was sad, when I was confused or frozen or drifting or desperate, I reached for a book. When I was joyful, successful, well-nourished, and content, I reached for a book. When the people I depended on disappeared or turned their backs, when I was handed what felt like too much to bear, when I was trying to do right by those I loved, when I was desperately trying to block out the raised voices in the room next to mine, or waiting for an answer that never came, when I needed a word to break the silence that surrounded me, I reached for a book. And when I moved to Brooklyn, ready to start my life fresh, to shake off some hard years and finally figure out who I really was, I reached for a book. Books have been my ladder, my stepping stones, my therapist, my teacher, my medicine, my parents, my religion, my lover, my fool, my instructional manual for life. Words, sentences, pages, and chapters have echoed my loneliness, reflected my joy, guided me to the shadowy corners of my heart and soul that needed to be coaxed into the light, given me strength, helped me grow and change. Books taught me to bloom. Books gave me my direction, my career, my community, my chosen family, my purpose. I'll stop there.
I think to start, so full disclosure, Glory and I know each other very well. We've known each other for a very long time. So this is going to be very casual.
Yes.
I think to start, I read this book a few times over at this point. My first question is always this question for anybody who writes a memoir. It's like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Like, when sitting down to try to figure out what to write or to figure out which stories to tell, how to tell those stories, was there stress? What gives a person the courage, right, to tell their story? Because none of our stories are our own. There are always other people involved that are sort of, sometimes indicted, sometimes, praised, sometimes a bit of both, right? Yeah. And so I guess my question to you is like, what gives you the courage? Was there any trepidation? Did you have to go through all these different sort of like, let me ask for permission for this, let me run this by so-and-so?
There were so many different iterations of this book. And the first time I tried to write it, I was asking for permission from my family, from my mother, from my father who has passed. There were so many things I wanted someone to say that you can do this. But at the end of the day, I had to give myself permission. I really had to be in a space where I was, more self-compassionate, less judgmental of the choices I made as a young person. I think initially when I started writing things and they were very revealing and a lot of times very difficult, I was judging my younger self. I just was like, how could you be so stupid? How could you make decisions that led you to a point where you were just not valuing yourself? Like, I just had these moments of just like, why? And once I finally let that go and like read it in a way that was more just loving to my younger self and knowing that like I was evolving, I was growing. At this point, I was, I'm now 42, but like when I was writing it, I was like in my mid 30s. I was all in so many transitions. I was about to have my son, and I just kept like being so critical of my childhood and all the things I experienced. And I was just like, there was no other way. Like if I had not experienced the loss of my father or experienced my mother's suppression or just even like the relationships I've had throughout my life, I wouldn't be me. And I had this beautiful experience when I was in New Orleans. We were just talking about like the tours, the stops that really left a lasting impression. And one of the readers in the audience, it came up to me and she's like, I read your book and I just recognized all the bringers in your life. And I was like, what's a bringer? Like, what does that mean? She was like, every time you needed someone, God was bringing people to you. When you needed help with your mom, someone was there. When you needed support from your church or in your school, that teacher, like all these people were bringing you all the things you needed. And it was just like such a moment where I was like, yes, I've always felt very favored and loved by spirit, by God. But when she said it, it was just kind of like, yes, like people have always kind of brought themselves and supported me in one way or the other. And books did that all the time. So when I wasn't able to talk to a person, I could go to a scripture or I could go to a chapter in Maya Angelou's books, and it was like crystal clear, like, okay, this is what you should do. And also you're not alone in this. Someone else has gone through it and they made it. And now they have a book or they've created some beautiful art from their pain or the things that they used to be ashamed of. And so I was just trying to build the courage and know that who I am today wouldn't exist without all the experiences I had. And hopefully, like someone else will read this, like the way I read all these books, and it like helped them feel seen and just more, I don't know, I want to say use the word real, because sometimes I felt like some of the things I was experiencing weren't even like, how is this possible? Like, why is this always happening? Like, why is this happening to me? But everybody's going through something. It's all relative. Everybody has a thing where they're asking God why, and it's just like, how you respond to that why and how you take it to help you just continue is what's most important. You can't sit in the why.
Yeah. I mean, the human experience is ultimately one of coping.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that we're not having a great time, but it does mean that we are coping.
We are coping.
Everybody is coping.
Yeah.
The best that that we all can. So one might think that because we know that, we might just extend a bit more grace to one another and extend a bit more grace to ourselves. And you know, it's interesting because the story, when I first read this book some months back, I was thinking like, all right, she's gonna take me on, this would be like a concordance using novels to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read the book and I was like, oh, this is her telling her story.
Yeah.
and using books as more of like a guidepost almost, using books as guideposts to sort of, it's like constellations, right? It's like, these are the stars that sort of map out this, and this, but the picture is the story in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my question is, when you started writing this, did you start off writing this as a straight ahead story? Or was it already like, I'm going to tell a story specifically about how these books did this, like saved me? Yeah. Because I'm curious about the craft part of this, right? Because I'm like, which way does this go? Because I also know myself, and I'm like, I'm gonna write this story, then I'm gonna figure out how to make this work.
No, I'm so glad you said that, because it was a very roundabout way. So the first thing that I knew I wanted to write about was the narrative of Frederick Douglass and Maya Angelou. And I think she's like universal. I think everyone has a Maya Angelou story to some extent. Like, you just recognize her voice, her audacity, how bold and beautiful she is. Like, I just knew that was a central point. So I was like, I'm going to write about these two things. And then clearly I wanted to write about the relationship between my mother and I. So originally when I set out to do the first draft, my mother had so a core part of the book is just talking about my mom's mental health crisis and how she was very debilitated from her depression. It left her in a state where she wasn't able to communicate. She wasn't able to parent in the way that she wanted to because of just how dire things were. So during that time when my mom was relatively silent, she wrote letters to us. So if she needed something, if she wanted to communicate anything, whether it was a grocery list or just a letter saying that she loved us, she wrote it down. And I collected all those letters throughout the years she was sick. So initially that was the crux of the first novel. It was all these letters that I was finally answering back to my mom. And it was a little bit avant-garde. It wasn't a traditional beginning to end. It was just a podge of all this stuff. And I loved it because it felt real. It was also my mother's voice. And it just had it just had the energy about it that I was really excited to share with the world and really put into memoir form. I started doing that. And then I had to ask my mom permission. And she was like, nope, thank you. She did not want any of those letters published, even one or two. I was like, well, can I just use this for the beginning and this is for the end and tell the in between? I just was trying to keep them in because they were so beautiful. And, quiet as kept, my mom is a beautiful writer. She would never call herself that, but the way she documents and write things is just, it has a magical quality to it. It just has a rhythm, and she writes in our native language as well. She just is a beautiful writer, but she did not want any parts of that. So I had to go back and think about, how do I tell my mom's story and my story without being so codependent on those letters? And that's when the arc of going to the books and going through the memories, looking at a book and looking at the memory and writing to that. And that was easy, because I do have, it's I was kind of joking about the Mary J. Blige song, but I do remember the first time I heard that song. I have a lot of creative memories tied to music or a play or a book. I just see things very clearly in that lens. So it was easy to write about the experience I had with my high school English teacher, or my first ideas about love came directly from books and movies. I was very obsessed with Romeo and Juliet. And when I was trying to find love in the correct way that is more generous and self-compassionate, I was reading a lot of bell hooks. So I was able to just kind of match up these memories. So I would write to that. Or if I was taking a long walk, I would just kind of talk into my voice notes and try to explain how I was feeling, because I wanted the reader to really get part of my interior life. And I've had a lot of warm and very generous feedback from folks from the book club. And the idea, or I guess people are just trying to encourage me, but they're always you're so happy, you're so enthusiastic, you just, you have a light about you. I'm so grateful people see that, but I didn't always feel that. And so I was trying to show that the story of my life. It's not one without challenges. And there have been very dark moments in my life. And to be very vulnerable, that all of that can exist inside a person. And to kind of break the facade that I had created on social media, where it was like every good thing, it was the highlight reel. I'm like, there have been things that have happened in my life that motivate my love for books. And this is a memory with you too, because during the National Book Awards, do you remember when Kimon was on stage and she was like, "I don't write for catharsis"? I remember listening to her, like my mouth was like, what? Like, because that's all I write for. I feel like I'm constantly like writing to heal something, to process something, to think about like life in a bigger and more grand way. And even in high school, I remember like reading, Emerson and thinking like, what? Like, who has this luxury of just like walking around the forest and like thinking and just like, I'm just like, I was like longing for that. But the reality of my life was not that. Like I had to be proactive and I had to work and survive and like live a life that was not one of just like frolicking and thinking about my enlightenment. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think this was the first time in my life that I could look at everything, look at every good or bad thing that's happened in my life and just write it down. And I really felt like I took my brain out of my head, set it down, looked at it for all its like crevices, and it just was like, I feel lighter. Like I really do feel, whether you publish a book or not, like writing down your story for all that it's worth and doing it with like abandon, just like, right. It like lets go. Something unravels in you. And I just do feel more confident. I do feel just more, maybe this is age too, but I'm just like, okay, I did a little life. And I got some things right, I got some things wrong, but I did it and I feel free from it. So I feel like the next like decade of my life, I'm just going to like go even harder. Like I'm just excited to like be present and live. And that was essentially when I did the prologue, I was like, I have done so much reading to like heal myself that I still want to heal because I think that's a lifelong journey and experience, but I just want to be present. I do not want to like lose myself in the words anymore. I want to just be here, and just like experience things in real time without questioning myself or looking for a model. A lot of this book is like me looking for examples of how to be a mother, how to be in a relationship, how to be an adult. Like I was constantly just like, tell me what to do. And that was the alternative title, by the way. It was like, tell me what to do. My editor did not like that. She was like, we can find something more catchy. And, so we cleaned it on Gather Me. But like, so much of my life was like, someone please tell me what to do and how to like be good at life, and that's not something, I don't know.
Ain't nobody good at life.
I know, but you don't know that. You don't know that though.
You don't know that. I mean, look, I think number one, I think Kimon is lying. And knowing her as well as I do, she's lying. Number two, she's a liar.
She's a very scholarly,
all of
beautiful
you should read
writer.
Dyscalculia. It's a brilliant book. If you haven't read it, Kimon Felix.
Yes, she's amazing.
She's brilliant, and she's young and an ingenue, and young people say stuff like that. That also, I think a lot of us in here are probably pretty upset that we won't ever get to read the story with the letters. At least I am. Yes. And so I would like to say, if you want to leave it somewhere,
right.
If you want to slide it to me, if you want to set it up in your will for posthumous publication.
Oh my God, that'd be so good.
Yeah,
that would be so good.
We could, I want your mom to live to be 200.
You listen.
If she don't quite make it to 200, though, I think you should probably.
Yes, because it is really good.
Like, is it just me? I'm the only person who feels this way. Right?
No. Right? It is really good. But I had to respect.
But it gave me like goose. It gave me like, I'm like, that's.
Yes. Yeah.
I get you respect. I probably would have. Well, no, I wouldn't have, because I'm like, I'd have disrespected my mother and put it out. But I'm like,
listen. No, the way my mama is.
No, I couldn't do it either. But
I know, but it was, at the end of the day, it was so good because I was really codependent on it, because I was like, this is good. Like, I know what the people want. Let me give the people what they want. Like, it was just like, but it was a different way to, again, go back to the page and start over and say like, 100%, this is my story. And I'm not relying on my mother's voice to kind of coax me through.
So here's a question then. Maybe it's a little loaded. So backstage, Glory told me she wasn't going to write no more. And I told you I was going to tell the people what you said.
Okay, yeah, I did say
Glory said she didn't write no more books. Cool. My question is, why not fictionalize this part? So why not take these letters and fictionalize them, right? So use tone, use voice, right? You can change the story. It's not your mother, right? And then you respond to those letters.
I mean,
Right?
I
It's
didn't
free
think.
game. I'm trying to give you free game. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay, so
if
fourth
you
book.
want to write another book, you know.
Don't get me started. Okay, so when I said I wasn't going to write another book, I said that with conviction because writing this book was a lot of work, and I think I needed some rest. I'm in my rest is resistance phase. I think we all are. We all need a lot of rest given the 2025 and all the things ahead of us. And so I am feeling like literally like I feel like I emptied my brain in so many ways. And so I'm like, wow, I don't have anything else to write about. But I do, but I need time to creatively fill the well. And I do love that idea though. If you want to
put
be
my name in the acknowledgments.
Hey, listen, I do love that
my
idea.
homeboy Big J, something like that.
I will. I'm look out for you. It's something about also, the industry of publishing, of writing. I also work at a bookstore. If you're ever in DC, stop by Politics and Prose. I have seen so many different sides of publishing. I have so many amazing writer friends. And I think I'm like, wow. I feel like I'm tired in a way that I want to really take care of myself and be present for my son. And just feel that well again. So it's being facetious. So I'm never gonna write again. But I just feel like I really got so much out with this book. And I love to be, a midwife of sorts. I love my role in developing Well-Read Black Girl and making sure that I'm continuing to advocate and make sure more people are writing those books and playing the role as editor. That's one thing I'm very passionate about, and learning to do that in a very proficient way. And being a good editor requires a different type of patience and observation, and being able to revise and go back and point edit authors in a different direction. And I think I need to cultivate that more.
Okay.
You
do what you want.
Okay.
So let's talk about these sort of mentors of yours that you found through these books, and the people that you're asking to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
I asked you this before. I like asking you this question because your answer changes every time. So Toni Morrison's off the table.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay, go.
So, because she the ultimate cheat code is
Yeah.
All right. So we're going top 5.
Top 5. Okay.
We're going top 5 women.
I'm ready for this though. I'm ready.
We're going top 5 women.
Yep.
Top 5 men.
Damn. You didn't do that last time.
I know I didn't do that last time. I know this is better for you.
Okay.
You
Fine.
know what I mean? This
Okay.
is better for you. Top 5 women, top 5 men for you.
Okay.
Specifically the one, not the best, the
Okay.
ones that you love that have impacted your life.
Yes.
Because we know the best. Toni Morrison.
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
So in terms of my life, Baltimore's own Lucille Clifton. I read so much of her stuff in college, and I felt like it has this quality of interior and beauty, and just there's this quiet rigor to it. So Lucille for sure. Toni K. Bambara.
Unsung hero.
Absolutely. Just if you haven't read Toni K. Bambara, you are missing out. It's a study in literary citizenship and activism, and just the preciseness of her writing is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
On that list, Paul Marshall, for sure. Just every time someone uses the word kitchen table and just what that means. Playwright Lynn Nottage, with the biggest thing that I struggled with. And I'm sure people can notice in the writing, I kept going into the first person. It was really hard for me to write dialogue. And that's probably, and I've tried my hand at fiction, and I still struggle with that. And I feel like when I want to get clear about how people sound, I go revisit plays. And I love the Nottage's work. I love her on stage, just reading that. She's so incredible. And then, who else is on? Who's the fourth? Who's the fifth? Who's the fifth? That was 4 people, right? Oh gosh, Maya Angelou. Because, you know,
Should have took her off.
I know. That's like an easy one.
She like, oh, that's disrespectful to call her.
It's
like,
not easy, but like, it's just like, she's classic.
she's the
like,
most famous writer she's the most famous Black writer in history.
absolutely. But you know what it is? I love her writing. But it's like her being. Like, I listen to so many like interviews and like, oh, okay. If we swap, we were just talking about her earlier. Edwidge
Nanticat.
Like the queen.
The great. Yeah.
I had a beautiful conversation. Oh, I'll share it with the audience. We talked about this, so I'll share it with y'all as well. Since we're all close. I have a personal relationship with Edwidge, and she has been so generous and warm, and in a way that, like, you meet somebody, they don't have to be nice to you. I'm like, why are you so nice? Why am I in your house? This is so great. So like, she's just like the kindest person. And I was really struggling with my dad passed, and she offered just me like this amazing advice and was just so loving. And I was like, how do you understand grief? Like, how do you understand death? Like, how do you process it? And she shared that when she was young, one of her uncles was a pastor, and she was constantly at funerals. Like, as a young girl, 5, 6 years old, she was there in the church and like listening to them do praise and worship and do like the funeral processions. And she just was like there experiencing it. And she just took it in as a way of life where people can be afraid of death and like walk away from it. It was something she walked towards. And I'm just like, what if we all had that kind of perspective of walking towards the things that we would generally fear, or the things that would like stop us in our tracks and make us feel like we can't, overcome this. Like, death is one of those things. Grief is one of those things that can just like paralyze you. And it's like, what do you do when you actually welcome it? Like, how can that change your perspective in your life? And for her, I felt like it's an embodiment of her art, the way Crick Crack and, Clara and the Sea Light and like Breath, Eyes, Memory, every single thing. Brother, I'm dying. Like, everything is like this beautiful, universal beckoning of like love and death. And really, aren't those like the only two things people are ever writing about? Love and death and love and death. And like, even with this, it's like, I'm writing about books, but I'm talking about love and death, And so she is just so iconic and so loving. And I'm avoiding your second 5 people.
Okay.
So there's that.
You
You would be on it.
I would. I shouldn't be, but I appreciate it. I'll tell you.
August Wilson. I love playwrights. I really like plays.
Shout out to August. I'll tell you before you finish. I'll give you time to think of your other 3.
Okay, fine.
You were talking about Maya Angelou's state of being.
Yeah.
Did you get to meet her?
Yes, in a very non-book related way. And this is how the universe, like when I was writing back, I was like, my memoirs, like, this is good. I was a tutor at a school, the Maya Angelou Public Charter School in DC. Mm-hmm. I was AmeriCorps, like a literacy educator. And I was there, and they had this annual gala every year. And she always came. And at this time she was, much older. She was like towards, maybe it was like 3 years before she like passed. But I was there, and I was able to like meet her. This kind of like, hi, I'm one of the tutors. And this is like before, like yeah.
Has anyone in the audience met her? Did anyone? You got to meet her? You got to have like a one-on-one with her? Me neither. But I'll tell you the way.
I thought you were like, did you?
No, but I'll tell you when I was 17, 18, you know how like she was all like Maya Angelou's work was like ubiquitous, even if you weren't a reader or you weren't like I wasn't a studious kid, but like we all knew.
Oh yeah.
Like Maya Angelou. I never read how to, the Caged Bird Sings. I never read Phenomenal. My mom had like Phenomenal Woman on the wall, right? But I never read it. I'm like, I never. It's interesting. Like the strangest sort of like, but just this figure, this name and this figure was always around. And she came to DC probably for this. And was uptown at Georgetown Day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the city of Washington, D.C. Suspended yellow curb parking because Maya Angelou was in town.
Oh, I love that.
So you could park on the yellow curb, right?
Oh,
it was wild. And so I pulled up to the school. You can see her. She rode around in a huge tour bus. Mm-hmm. And I went, and I'm thinking nothing of this, but my cousin was like, Maya Angelou in town. I want you to, my older cousin, you're going to come with me. You're going to get some culture, basically.
Yeah.
And I sat in the front row.
Yep.
And I lied to you not. It was the first time that I'd ever experienced like a person's energy.
Yes.
Like a person's like, I'm talking like I could feel it pushing me back in the, did you have this experience?
Yeah.
It's it was I'm sorry that all of you didn't get an opportunity to just be in the space.
Yeah.
It was like, you could feel it like pushing me back in the seat.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. And then she told the story about her son coming home from school, telling her that the kids in his class were said that his mother was ugly.
Yeah.
And she wept
Oh,
in front of us. This is probably 30 years prior that this happened to her. And she cries in front. First of all, she was like 6'1".
Yeah.
Right. And she's like, and she's just this huge presence. And she's standing in the middle of the stage and she's weeping in front of us, telling us this story. And I became so obsessed that for the next year of my life, I remember back then you could go into the phone book, and I found her phone number because she used to teach down at Bethune-Cookman.
Yes.
So I found her office number and would just call her phone.
I love that.
Every day.
I love that.
And leave messages on her answering machine. Every day.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
For like a year, just trying to talk to her again.
Yo,
I look back now and it's like you was wilding, but
right,
like,
right.
you know what I mean?
No.
But it does speak to that's a different thing
Yes.
that I don't know if many of us have, right?
No.
I don't know, and I don't know what causes that. I don't know.
It's like this like it pulls you in.
It was the strangest experience.
I mean, I feel that like I go to the Library of Congress, they have, a lot of her audio tapes and her performing or just having like regular conversation. She has interview tapes on there. And you can feel it in the interviews. You can feel it when you watch her on YouTube. It's just like she has a pulse about her and it pulls you in and just, I was obsessed with her. And now that I'm thinking about it, I actually did meet her another time at Howard, but she just signed my book. It was like one of those things where we were all like, and it had to be a long time ago because I had a disposable camera. I had like a Kodak thing and I got mad because it got jammed. So I couldn't take I was like, I'm on my lap. And so I was all trying to press it. And she was just like, okay, you got to go.
Keep it moving.
Because there was a lot of people, but she did sign my book. I have phenomenal. I have it signed, and she signed it "Glory," the exclamation point. Yeah, and it was just like one of those things where I was like, oh,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, your last three.
Oh, okay.
August Wilson, me.
Yes, yes. This is hard. Alex Haley.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
He be getting slept on.
Yeah, he really does. I remember reading Queen for the first time and being
a masterpiece. Yo,
this is amazing.
Everybody got to read more Alex Haley.
Yeah.
Go find all of his old Playboy art. He started in Playboy.
Yes.
Read all of his old Playboy pieces.
I
Genius.
read those. Yes, I read those too.
For those of you who don't know, Playboy was known for publishing the best literature at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't know that. They were like famous for publishing the best writers of our time in that magazine, including Alex Haley.
Yeah.
Some of the original parts of Malcolm X and Roots
are in Playboy. Yes, I know this. Yeah. I always feel like I have a joke with one of my friends, and I'm always like, this should be a trivia question. Like who wrote for Alex Haley,
Alex Haley's good.
Ta-Nehisi. We gotta give love to Ta-Nehisi.
Shout out to Baltimore. We in Baltimore, so you had to say that.
I did, yes. I remember the first time I met Tom, I was just like, I just really love your dad. And he was like, okay.
He was like, all right. shout out to Paul Coates.
Just like, this Water Dancer, this is a great book, but tell your dad I said hi. And who else? I feel like I need James.
James Baldwin.
No, James Baldwin. I was thinking of James McBride.
Oh, that's what's up.
James Baldwin too. That feels like bad. James Baldwin is amazing.
Too late.
But
James McBride.
I was thinking I wanted a more contemporary fiction writer. James McBride is like I just love his writing.
So that's okay. Can we sorry, guys. This was what I was afraid of, but also kind of what I was hoping.
This is what we signed up for.
I think he might be. So I have like a theory. Oh. So we argue all the time about. Okay. So me and Mitch and a lot of us talk about when Toni Morrison died. We had a lot of conversations. Every conversation is always around like who's gonna is someone gonna step? People say it's Jessamine. People used to say it was Edwidge, right? Like who is sort of the next in line? I was like, I wonder. I personally think it's Jessamine, but I was also thinking like, well, is there anything analogous for male writers? Like, is there a male writer that I would argue Percival, but I also was saying like. James McBride, I think, is grossly underrated. Yeah. Even for some of the big swings that he takes, and he's going to be the only person if there was a writing like a literature hall of fame, he'd be the only person in both music and
yeah,
because he's as good of a musician.
absolutely. Well, I think that's why I love his fiction so much. It has a musicality to it, and I feel like he's such a writer that takes risk on the page.
Big risks.
Yes, I mean, it feels like avant-garde, and he plays with form and story, and like he has mastered of doing the interior in such a beautiful way. It's like you feel like, okay, I know this person's experience,
I know everything about
them, and it's just a beautiful thing to just like witness, and then hearing him speak too. You know, I obviously love books in all forms, audio, otherwise, but when I hear like a writer talk about their book, the way you hear him like explain his storytelling and like decisions he makes, it's just like it's amazing.
If your life were a genre, your life up to this point, if it were a genre of literature, only one genre though.
This is hard.
If you had to pick a single genre, what would you say?
I probably feel like it would be creative nonfiction.
That's a cheat answer.
Okay.
Because it's a real life. You can't say that.
I know. Like, that's like a really good. Okay, well, fine. Contemporary fiction.
So, like, all right, how about this? If your life was a movie genre.
Oh gosh, Jason.
Well, because you're being weird. Like, I'm like, everybody in the audience knows what I'm asking, right? Is it drama? Is it comedy? Is it right?
Okay, it's like
she like contemporary fiction. What
I
are
was
you talking
thinking
about?
like a book. I just said I work in a bookstore.
I'm just saying, like, we know you're alive, so we know it's contemporary. That
Okay,
seems like
it's a what is it when you mix comedy and dramedy? Dramedy?
Dramedy.
Yeah, it's a dramedy.
It's a
Okay,
dramedy.
because I think this is the one thing I will say after I like went back and like reread my book. I was like, oh, this feels really sad, and I'm a very happy person. I love to laugh. I like to be silly. I feel like I'm very uplifting. But I was like, damn, a lot of hard things happen. So I think that like if people that know me one-on-one, like yourself, know that like even with the hard stuff, I can look on the other side and just like laugh and be like really laugh at everything that's happened in my life, and I don't take myself too seriously. I respect my craft and all, but like I just also just see the humor in things, and so. And things happen to me that I'm just like, this is actually like really absurd and funny too. So I think that's what I would pick.
I know I've been running out of time,
Yes.
but I want to. There are two people in your story that I really appreciate, and that I actually have. I want to know how they've impacted your writing, and that those two people are your brothers.
Yeah.
When I met you, the baby brother was
little.
He was like 6.
Yeah, he was tiny. Yeah.
Now he's like a grown man.
Yeah, he's an engineer. He is. Yeah,
doing his thing.
Yes.
And so, talk a bit about these two young men that ostensibly you raised.
Yeah. With both my siblings, it's been such a beautiful evolution. I think as I wrote this, I thought so much about them and all the gaps that we had in our experience. There was a lot of things that I didn't really understand about my parents' story growing up. And I always wanted our family to look a certain kind of way. And I wanted it to be like, just like the average kind of white picket fence type family. And with my brothers, we had to like create our own picket fence. And so I would like create traditions and try to create memories that I knew that they would hopefully just look back on fondly and like know that even though we experienced some hard times, that the love that we had within our circle was unconditional and unbreakable. And so I did take great care about writing about their experiences. And I did run everything past them, and they read drafts and we talked about it. We had a family meeting, and my brother Maurice. So in the book, his name is Maurice, but we in our family, we call him Morris. It's like a not a joke, but like it's just the way both my parents had heavy accents. So Maurice, it came out like Morris. It's like a way that like they said it, and it just stuck. So I basically if you are in the inner circle and you're like close with us, you call him Morris. And then when I was doing my audiobook, they were like, you keep saying Morris. That's not how it's like spelled in the book. It's like, it's Maurice. I was like, oh yeah, that's like his real government name. So anyway, I just like wanted to take great care to make sure that they felt represented and the story was like true. So they were in a lot of ways my checks and balances. So I would talk about a memory, how I remembered it, and they would be like, oh yeah, that was like this, or look at this picture, or do you remember this moment? There's a part where I talk about when my dad passed away. My brother was with me in New York that day. The reason I remembered that like particular moment is because he had posted something on Instagram and he had like written this whole thing. This is before we realized he had passed. And I was able to like look back like through our memories and our text messages and like this one, photograph that had us like dancing in the middle of New York before we, understood what had happened. And so I was constantly going back to my brothers to be like, is this memory accurate? Am I remembering things like how they really happened? Or is my imagination running away with me? So they just offered me a lot of like grounding in that as I was writing. And they also just like, I don't know, I think in a weird way, how my brothers are proud of me. Oh, I might cry. How my brothers are proud of me are like, it's because my relationship with my mom is complicated and my dad isn't no longer here. Like how they're proud of me remind me so much of my dad. And just like, there's a way that like your parents are proud of you. Like it's because they're the only people that can be proud of you in that way. And there's the way that like my brother's proud of me. They can be proud of me in that way because we all lived it together. And so other people can be proud and happy and show their support, but they really know because they were there. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I mean,
so I'm very protective of my brothers, and they're such amazing like uncles to my son, which is like amazing to witness. Like just seeing that, and that's having like the family dynamic that I really longed for when we were younger. That we have that now. How like my how Zeke like responds to his uncles is just like amazing. He loves them so much, and I feel like we've created our own the things that we maybe were lacking or just weren't like there was a misstep for whatever reason. We've made our own, and so I love my brothers clearly.
No, I think it's always. I think the best part about being a writer is that throughout the process of making something, you realize that writing is an imitation of life, and that we every single day have an opportunity to add sentences, to revise those that are there, right? To reframe our stories and indent where there needs to be indent, delete where there needs to be deletion, right? It's like the most beautiful part of this thing is that like you got to take these two young men and you got to be a part of creating them as humongous main characters in your already main character narrative. And that's just, I think, I'm glad that you honor them in the way that they have honored you. Yeah. And I think you do that very well in this book, as well as your mother and father, however complicated that may be. There's a way for us to critique our loved ones and to be honest about our experiences with our loved ones and to love them.
And love them, yeah.
And to love them. So good on you. Yeah. We're gonna get to questions.
Don't make me cry.
Do you think before we do you think that you age out of the Baltimore DC beef? Because I've been thinking about it for years. You say no. You say no. See, you a hater. See, this is it. You from here. You must be from here. You know? Because I just don't feel that. It's weird. When I was a kid, I did because we were all taught to like, you go up the road. But I don't really feel that way, and I'm just tired of pretending like I hate y'all because I just don't.
I love Baltimore.
I'm just over it, Like, when we gonna let it go, cuz? Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, if you have any questions,
we have
about 15 minutes for your questions. If you do have a question, I'd ask you to direct it to that mic. Or to this mic, so that the folks that are watching online can hear your question. I will start with a question from the audience. watching online so that the folks here can get in line. I'm asking you to get in line. No. I will also add that Sophia's lived in Baltimore now for 4 years, and Jason Reynolds has asked her, have you come to visit DC yet? And the answer is still no.
See,
It's a 20-minute train ride.
right? Come on, Sophia. We're gonna put you in the car
like
tonight.
$7 on the
We're gonna
Amtrak.
put you in the back seat. Let's go.
Folks, she loves Baltimore that much. Okay, let's start here. Glory, can you provide us with some insights on your writing habits? Do you have a time and place that you prefer? Any idiosyncrasies?
Oh, that's a great question. So my writing habits are pretty, I go all in. So I don't, wake up at 5 a.m. and write in the morning or anything like that. I typically will dedicate 72 hours or a week or something to kind of go into something and write as much as possible. And then I go back and do slow edits of, taking an hour out of the day or taking a week to unpack a chapter or something like that. But I really love to have alone time and dedicated time where I can just write thoroughly and be away from my house and be away from my beautiful child and just have a quiet time. So I'll hold myself in a hotel or a cabin or whatever the case may be. And then once the most of this book was out, then I did a lot of one-on-one sessions with my editor. I really do believe in having a workshop and having an editor that you really trust, because what happened was that I would write something and I would feel really confident about it or really clear. And then she would ask me a question and I'd be like, oh, that's a really good question. I just love the idea of okay, go deeper, think further about this. Those notes would help me go back and continue to revise. So there were so many different iterations of this book because I had an incredible editor throughout the process. So I was very reliant on her to kind of make sure this was in the best form. But yeah, I'm a hurdle inside the room for a couple of days and write as much as possible and then going back and edit.
Great. I'm going to ask one more question from the online audience while we have a person here get into the mic. Mm-hmm. Who is an author that not enough people are reading right now?
Oh my gosh. It's all these top 5 type questions and not enough people are reading. I recently started reading River Solomon's book. They are an incredible, just the way, it's weird. It's weird. In the best way, where I was going to use the word avant-garde.
Weird is okay.
Yes. The way that they experiment with form and suspense and pulling the reader in with these beautiful breadcrumbs. And I really, and I wouldn't even categorize it as sci-fi, thriller. It's just I
don't know what.
Yeah. And so I'm really intrigued with writers that experiment with form and have just a way of pulling apart language, and we mentioned Kimon earlier. Kimon Felix is a great example of that.
So weird.
Yeah, just incredibly, it makes you want to revisit the language, and there's a rigor to it where you don't understand it at first glance. Yeah. And I love that. I think things that kind of puzzle me, what the fuck? I just I love that. And if people are being honest, Toni Morrison is the precedent of what the fuck. You don't if you read Morrison the first time and you say you understand, lies.
People love it. It's what
is happening? So I just love that. I'm also a huge fan of magical realism. That is just anyway, there's so many things, but that was the first thought that came to mind.
My answer is Julie Otsuka.
Ooh.
I think Julie Otsuka is
that's a good one.
Probably one of the most underrated writers working today. She wrote, her last book was The Swimmers. Mm-hmm. Before that, she wrote The Buddha in the Attic. These books are 100 pages.
Yeah. They're translated.
No.
Is that translated?
She's American.
Oh.
Yeah, she's an Asian American. Yeah. But she writes about China.
Yeah.
Nope. Otsuka, Japan. Yeah. And this big master of language, master of brevity. Mm-hmm. I mean, The Swimmers, the first half of the book is just about all the people who come to a public pool every day.
Yeah.
The whole first half is her
That's
just
awesome.
like describing all the people who meet at the public pool,
Yeah.
and the second half is like, what in the world? It's like she's a master. So
Yeah.
that's my pick, Julie Otsuka.
Excuse me, could you repeat the first person that you mentioned?
Rivers.
Oh, Rivers Solomon.
No, I thought, okay, I thought it was somebody, I thought you said Limon or something.
Kimon Felix. Kimon Felix. Yeah.
But her name is spelled, I should spell it because you
Yeah.
won't, CAMONGHNE.
I would say Google it.
CAMONGHNE. Yeah.
Dyscalculia.
This in her book is called Dyscalculia, which is basically dyslexia but with numbers.
Yeah. It's a
It's a real thing.
So those
yeah.
are two books that, yeah, for sure. Kimon's book for sure. I would put that on that list.
And her collection of poetry is great
And
too.
her poetry is amazing. I also have the greatest theory that, like, I don't know if this is the greatest theory. I sound ridiculous saying that, but my theory is majority of the writers that I am love are poets,
Yeah, including Julie Otsuka.
including you,
I appreciate
Jason,
that. Thank you very much.
and Coates and Hanif and
Jasmine,
all of these incredible writers,
Ocean Vuong,
all poets. So if you're
Yeah.
able to like master poetry,
Sophia
like
Sinclair.
Sophia,
It's
oh
a
my
whole lot.
gosh, Sophia Sinclair. Oh, my
All
God.
right, get to these questions.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go.
It's all good. Hello. So I don't have a DC, Baltimore preference. I'm from Alabama. So
You
It's
love
all-
Alabama too.
You Switzerland, you know what I mean?
I'm just here. But thank you for this evening. I just have a question in terms of just writing a memoir. So I'm an avid follower of your well-read Black girl community, and that's where I get all my ideas in terms of what to read for the summer and whatnot. But the question is, as you're writing or when you were writing, how did you really, can you unpack just what's the dance like between keeping authenticity throughout what you would share, but then also protecting privacy and things that, you might not want the world to know?
Yeah, I had to really kind of wrestle with what was being vulnerable and what was like crossing a boundary. So as I mentioned, the letters, that was clearly like a boundary that I decided I couldn't cross. I wanted to respect my mother in that case. And then there were other things where I was talking about just like my relationships and things like that. And sometimes I tried to be intuitive as possible. I'm just like, am I just embarrassed? Or is it like I'm not being really vulnerable, right? And I had my own kind of like list of checks and balances. I would write it down. I'm like, how do I really feel about this? I talked about it a lot in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to very close friends that again were with me during that phase of my life, that season. I'm very fortunate to have like friends from childhood, from high school that knew me during these moments. And so I would read it out loud to them. I would talk to them. And after I talked to them, if I was like, oh, I'm not embarrassed about this, it just happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, like I've grown from this. I'm not harboring any resentments. And that's how I decided. There are definitely some other things that I was like, ooh, I cannot say this out loud. And like,
Right.
and if I had that feeling of like, oh, I feel like really like bad about this, or I just had to be intuitive with each scenario. But when it came down to it, all the things that I shared, I did ask consent from my siblings, from, my parents. I prayed about it. And I really just wanted to know that like whatever I shared, I could stand behind it and be confident talking to a stranger, talking to a family member, and know it wasn't like crossing, a boundary, because everybody has their boundary and it. Like, I think it's just like something internally you feel. And I think the more times you talk about it with people you trust, like your friends and family, your editor, whatever the case may be, it kind of solidifies in your mind of, okay, this is for me to keep. And, this is for me to share. And I have another good friend who read it and she was like, girl, you still got some mystery. And I was like, okay, let's publish. I was like, I still got a little bit of mystery. I'm gonna keep that. That kept me content. I was like, all right, I'm still cute. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for following and being part of the community.
Hi. I just wanted to say I'm glad you mentioned Julie Otsuka because her book, The Buddha in the Attic, inspired me to write my first ever short story.
It's a masterpiece.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
Hi, Glory. I I really identify with the passage that you read from your book about how much books have taught you. And I think I can say almost everything I've learned came from books. As an immigrant myself to this country, I came when I was 16. And reading books have just been my way of learning just what it means to be Black in America. So my question for you is, what do you think makes our journey different as Black girls and Black women that makes us reach out for these books to help us navigate life?
Oh, that is a beautiful question. That is such a beautiful question. I think what happens is these books are not just books. They become really lifelines. They show us how we can support and love each other. They show our joy, our sorrow, all the things that we're trying to unpack in ourselves. Earlier we were talking about the books that kind of reflect the interior. Anytime I read a book by another Black woman, whether it's a classic like Maya Angelou or something more contemporary like Sophia Sinclair's, I can recognize myself in it. There's like a universal language that we are telling one another, no matter where you're from. So my first generation experience can connect with your experience. I can see the love that's there, the longing that's there, the desire that we often have to be seen fully and belong in spaces. That's why we create our own. Well-Read Black Girl wasn't something that happened accidentally. People would love for me to say that I had a business plan, I had this, that, and the other. I was sincerely looking for kinship and friendship. I entered the city with these big dreams and these ideas, but I got there and felt so lonely. But the moment I was able to read a book and share a story with someone who was also experiencing the same things, also understood what it meant to like hold identity in a very unique, special place. Like, being a Black woman is like no other. Like, we come support each other. I was recently having a conversation with my one of my close girlfriends. It's like sisterhood is such a unique concept that I feel like Black women we understand that like I can't, and it's something intuitive. I don't even know if I can articulate it in a clear way, that like Black women know sisterhood, how we show up for each other, how we like care for each other. It is a very particular and special and like generous way that I don't think anyone else is able to emulate. That's why, when you see these movements of talk that say protect Black women, say her name, all that stuff, that is like the energy and the essence of that sisterhood. It can't be replicated. It is something that we are innately raise and like cherish and understand, whether you're my blood sister or not. So I love the fact that I'm able to like insert my work into this very special canon, and I hope to God that this book finds the person that needs it, that it gives them comfort and refuge and peace of mind, because those stories did that for me. Like, when I felt alone, I was able to pick up Morrison and pick up Angelou. I knew who I was in between those lines. And it was something that just like held me. It continues to hold me. Like, there's not a place in the world where I'm not proud to be a Black woman. I'm very proud of who I've become, the experiences I've had. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. I just like our stories are just, we here.
I always say Black women are the safest cult in the world.
Hey, it's true.
Yeah, wow.
We seriously.
I'm
it's
with
like,
you. Trust me. I wish I could be. I'm in it and ain't in it, but I wish I could be. It is a cult-like thing.
It's a love.
I know we got time for.
Yeah.
We got time.
We got time for two quick last questions.
I'm glad you said that. That's what I was going to say.
First, I have to say thank you. One, I am here. I'm Jasia Gavin. Joanne Gavin is my mom. She told me to tell both of you hello.
I say hello.
So, and she's also watching online. But my quick question for you is, if you all were books right now, and a student 20 years, 30 years in were to come pick you up off the shelf, speak to that future student, that future reader, because this is being recorded, and maybe 20, 30 years when you're a little more seasoned, speak to that. And I'll take my answer offline.
All right, you go first.
If I were a book in 20 and I was picked up off the shelf in 20 years, what would I want to articulate? What would I want to communicate to that particular reader? Entertainment. It's so funny how we sometimes forget that life is supposed to be a good time.
Yeah.
Entertainment. If I could be the book that makes somebody feel good, if I could be somebody's coping mechanism for a week, bring some joy and some laughter, some levity to a heavy time. We act like that's discounted, right? That isn't weighted, that isn't sophisticated, that isn't necessary, right? It's like we put that kind of stuff over here, and then it's like we need depth, and it's like, well, this is the greatest shovel you will have, right? And so that's it for me. Some entertainment would be good.
Yeah. I've said this a couple of times throughout this conversation. I just hope this book offers self-assurance and this idea of you can survive this, whatever this is, that you can see yourself more clearly and love yourself throughout every experience. I really hope like a young Black woman sees this and this is like, okay, I understand Glory a little bit more. I know the experiences she went through, and I too can accomplish all the things that I want to, whether I want to become a writer or the next president of the United States, all the things. I just want it to be something that is motivating and full of love, love for self.
That's a good question. Last question.
Hi, hello. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you guys. I first came across your movement in 2016 when I first came to Iowa in the middle of nowhere. So it really kept me going through those 4 years. And now I'm actually an English teacher, and we just wrapped up Born a Crime, which is a memoir. And I have my students writing their own memoirs in response to that book. And I think writing a memoir is so vulnerable. You can't really study how to write a memoir because it's your voice. But I was wondering, since you mentioned Sophia Sinclair, were there any other memoirs that you read in preparation for writing your memoir? And if you could give us a couple of titles.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I read so many, which I recommend, but also don't, because it's like, I could never write. I will never be able to write anything because I was just studying so many amazing writers. The two that come to mind that I encourage you and your students to read, Imani Perry is a fantastic scholar, and I really adored her book, Breathe, A Letter to My Sons, which is like a slim, beautiful book. It's so good. It's like one of my favorite books. I listened to it on audio. I wrote it. I read it, and I have so many notes in the margins. And again, that idea of like knowing your audience and who you're writing towards. I was thinking so much about my son as I was writing this, and thinking about, our family history and what I would leave him with. And I really meditated on the fact that, like, if I ever lost my voice, if I was ever in a space of not able to communicate my heart and my desires, I wanted my son to be able to pick this up and know who I was trying to become. And that was very important to me, like to leave him my story in my own words. So that book motivated me in terms of craft. She has these beautiful scenes. Like there's this perfect scene where she's teaching. She gives her son some blackberries, and he has like allergic reaction to them, or he like responds to them where she doesn't, he doesn't like it. And it just was such there are all these like beautiful little nuanced scenes where it just is like the detail and the love and care is there. So I recommend that highly. And then the second book was Sarah Broom, The Yellow House. And she does, in terms of memoir, it's so well researched, and it's a pure perfect study of landscape. She did so much. I mean, the book, the first few chapters, she's not even born yet. Like she's just talking about her life and her experience with her parents and her, being a soul of New Orleans, like what that means when your family is from the Ninth Ward, and like what that looks like. So she does a lot with landscape there. And I studied that because I was thinking so much about being first generation and the fact that both my parents are Nigerian, and I've spent time there, but I did not grow up there in a way of like knowing the nuances of like a being from my country. Like I know it by blood and by like pride, but there's things that, you know, you have to like grow up there. You gotta like drink the water there and be like, see it every day, that I was trying to write towards, but I didn't have the like lived experience. And so I was very curious about how she wrote about a time where she was not present, but she's still of the place, right? And you can do both. You know, you can write to the things that you don't know or you desire to know. And she does that in a really beautiful way.
I would suggest also Kendra Allen, How I Learned the Alphabet.
Ooh, that's a good
which
one.
is an underrated piece of work because it's a memoir, but it's written as a collection of essays. Because I think students need to know that there are lots of ways that one might write a memoir.
Yeah.
And it's a hyper creative way to think about nonfiction. And I would also recommend June Jordan's Soldier.
Oh, yes.
Which is a genius piece of work with it's poetry and prose sort of dancing on the same page.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much. You're so sweet.
Folks, please help me thank our moderator, Jason Reynolds. And our author, Glory Edim. Glory Edim. Glory Edim. It's Edim, y'all. And I had that in my head. We ask now that you buy some books from our local indie. Snug Books is outside. We'd be happy to sell you books, and Glory would be happy to stay and sign your books and talk to you a little further. I want to add very quickly, we talked about Amani Perry. She's going to be our guest for our annual Book Lovers Breakfast on February 1st for a new novel. So from Glory.
I'll be here too. I'm coming.
Yes. Thanks again for coming out. We'll be out in about 5 minutes.